it is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
The law enjoins us to be answerable to the sovereign of the country.
Our members of the force, we have always been demanding officers to be highly disciplined and being accountable to people of Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles ODONGTHO.
A very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur and development consultant. And RAMATHAN GGOOBI, an economist and university don.
I've really got perturbed that in Uganda we are building parties with no membership subscription.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A very good evening. You're most welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines, this 19th May 2021. It's a Wednesday and the show is back. The discussion is going to shortly start. We are going to be looking at the economy and whether it can rebound. The COVID still lives with us. And of course, the national economy has been battered. People have lost jobs. People have lost money. People have lost opportunities. So many prospects have been dented. And in the studio to discuss all that today, we have, let me introduce Honorable David BAHATI. He is former minister in charge of planning in Ministry of Finance. Right now, we don't have full cabinet. So until a new one is appointed, he is still a former minister. Honorable David BAHATI is joining us by Zoom from Buziga. Is he online? David, good evening. Let me request my technical team to work on the line. I can't hear you, but let me introduce the other guests as the technical team works on your line. We have in the studio the new MP for Sheema Municipality, Honorable DICKSON KATESHUMBWA. Some of his friends know him intimately as Katesh. Honorable, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
It's your first time, and we want to congratulate you for being sworn in yesterday successfully.
Thank you.
Without a court case or a petition. Thank you. You're most welcome. We have Honorable DENIS NYANGWESO. He is the new MP for Samia Bugwe Central in Busia. You're most welcome, DENIS.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for the show.
Have you been sworn in?
Thank you for the invitation. I was sworn in today.
Good.
As a new member of Parliament for the 11th Parliament.
Good.
Good evening, viewers.
Good evening. Both have now been sworn in. Now we can comfortably say they are MPs of the 11th Parliament. Stamped and approved. You're most welcome to the show. We have a Professor of Economics who is not yet MP. I don't think he
will never be.
No. Mr. RAMATHAN GGOOBI is a panelist on this show. GGOOBI, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to the viewers. I'm happy to be back.
Good. Can I confirm whether Honorable Bahati is now on?
Can you hear me, Charles?
Okay, we are going to start the discussion, and as Honorable Bahati's network is being worked on, Sarah BIREETE is out of town, so she cannot join us today. She probably will be joining us next week. And Honorable Katuntu, we missed him. He was sworn in yesterday. We congratulate you, Honorable Katuntu, wherever you are hearing us from. But let the discussion start. Let me start with, and viewers, I must tell you today it is money, economics, finance, and stuff like that, because the gentlemen who are here are all in that league. But let me start with Honorable Katesh. You are coming to a parliament at a time when the COVID has battered the economy globally. We must start from that knowledge. And Uganda is not safe either. Our economy has been reversed, and GDP now standing at about 2.9. And you guys who know economics will be explaining for us what that means from about 6.8, which had been registered in 2019. And of course, projections indicate that even if it rebounds maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, it may not really go back to 6.8 as fast as possible. What do you think should be done by government that you are part of, and you're starting with a new government sworn in last week? What do you think your government should do to ensure that people in their pockets have money to spend, livelihoods improved, quality of living improved?
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles. It is true, Uganda, like other economies, have been hit by COVID. And the result of that is that it has slowed down our growth projections. Rightly so, from 6.8% to now a projection of around 3.5% this financial year. If you look at the projected figures for the next financial year, it's still around 4.5%. What it means is that government must study the impact, the sectors that have been impacted heavily by the COVID. For example, if you look at the hospitality industry, the tourism, I think it is the one that has shrunk more. Even agriculture, even wholesale. So we have to study the sectors that have been hit very hard and channel the efforts to stimulate the economy proportionately into those sectors. So the question is that the efforts that are being put in or are planned to be put in must be looking at reviving the sectors that have been severely hit. If you look at the biggest part of our GDP is about 50% comes from the informal economy. Now, the lowest person, the local man on the street, how do we, stimulate him? We have had the interventions by government, putting more money in UDB to stimulate industry, which is a very good measure. But I think we need to also look at some kind of trade finance that can assist the SMEs, the small and medium businesses, so that they can come up. Someone who is involved in trade, very small scale, we need to find an affordable trade finance that that person can partake at very, very good rates, because that person may not easily walk into UDB, fulfill all the demands and acquire a loan. So that's quite very key. Of course, as a country, the beauty with COVID is that it affected everyone in the world. So every country is trying to recover, to find a solution. Our recovery will depend upon the timeline of the vaccine rollouts throughout the world. What it means is that once we have many people vaccinated around the world, then it opens up the travel industry, and then you can have tourism, rebounding. We have new airlines which have been acquired, but they can't fly to certain destinations because of the current situation, the lockdowns, the travel restrictions. So once you have improvement in terms of the vaccine rollout globally, then you expect some easing in terms of the international travel, in terms of the tourism recovery. But of course, as a country, we have to be prepared. Everyone is competing for recovery. So how do we, for example, look at policies that can attract investment? Investment growth has slowed down. The rate at which industries were coming before COVID, it slowed down. If you talk to some of the investors, they will tell you that the projects which had been lined up, the industries which had been lined up to come in couldn't, start. But also, as long as the rest of the world, like China, is still closed, and many other markets, then we get the shocks. So the economy is dependent on what do we do to stimulate the economy at every level, but also, hoping that the whole world, the timeline for vaccine rollout improves, and then we start seeing easing in the global, travel market, so that the tourists can come in. And tourism is one of the biggest contributors to the GDP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Dennis, coming to you, do you think that whatever KATESHUMBWA, is whatever is suggesting can be, can that be woken up within the next 1 year? In your projection, from what you view, do you think that that can be done with a certain level of commitment by government, commitment by parliament, commitment by different players or actors? Do you think that that can be done in the next 1 year or 6 months? What are you thinking?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Since this is my maiden opportunity to appear on UBC, and given the fact that my colleagues were well spaced, allow me to remove the mask such that our viewers can really see me.
Especially your voters.
Yes, my voters from Busia. Yeah, Katesh has, Honorable has elaborated very well, especially the sectors that have been hit so hard. And he has also demonstrated the intervention so far by the government. Unfortunately, we were sworn in this week, and because of the budgeting process in the country, the budget for next financial year has already been passed. So as new leaders, or as a new government, we are going to have, first of all, a challenge. We don't know the mind of the government at the time of forming the budget, which we are going to run in the next 1 year, because you are giving me a time frame of 1 year. Is it possible? But the issue of the impact of COVID on hospitality industry and interventions may gradually come in the country, but most importantly, the business community, the SMEs were hard hit. And when you look at the government interventions through UDB, they are looking at big private sector industries that can compute, can provide audited accounts. And so the process is so long for even to qualify to apply for the interventions by UDB. The SMEs, the people in these urban settings, the food vendors in the restaurants, the saloon operators, the border borders who have got border borders to ride on loans and they have not been able to pay. We want to, as a Parliament, we should be interested to see what so far government has proposed as interventions to reach out to. First of all, we are dealing with a very complicated sector, the informal sector, which is one of the biggest employers, again, in Uganda. These people are not formalized. They don't have, some of them don't even have registered premises where they operate from. But because of the sole proprietorship, they have managed to provide employment for themselves, employment for the immediate families, and also employment for other people, depending on how big the businesses are. So the biggest challenge, Charles, is to look at the budget, see the mind of the government during the formation of this budget, which we are now going to appropriate, and see if there are any alterations we can make, or if we can fast track some of the interventions in some of the sectors that are interconnected, like agriculture. Agriculture must be supported a lot to provide inputs for some of the industries we are talking about, which are being supported through UDB interventions. So you support them. The farmer has not been supported, cannot supply this SME that has gotten funding from the government, then still the interventions are not going to help us to boost the economy. That's my take on this.
Okay. Professor GGOOBI, this is your pet subject, and not just a pet subject, you have participated in writing the manifesto that is going to lead Uganda through these next 5 years. And one of the things you said recently was that for the first time, the budget and the budget and the manifesto are all aligned to the NDP3, which is supposed to guide development and economic transformation. Having been sworn in as a new government, what do you think are those areas where government should put in money? What do you think that these MPs, with the new budget that they are supposed to discuss immediately after it has been read, what do you think are the areas, priorities that they should be looking into?
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. First, let me add on the numbers which my good friend Honorable KATESHUMBWA was giving. And you know both of them, I know them very well. This one, we sat on the same bench at Makerere for the 3 years. We were doing our first degree. I have participated, yes, in that process, but also I participated in the process of looking at the impact of COVID on the economy. Back in April and May of last year, and then through the year we have been trying to update the numbers. We found that the COVID-19, if it was to go with the scenario which so far we have right now, where the virus has been contained in Uganda. It's not widespread to the level we have seen elsewhere, that we're likely to lose about 2.3 million livelihoods. You know, in Uganda, we shouldn't so much stick to jobs, because many people in Uganda are not necessarily employed. They employ themselves. They create livelihoods. So we are likely to lose up to 2.3 million livelihoods, and that's massive. Why do I say it's massive? Because the data we have of the National Household Survey, which UBOS conducted in 2017, 16-17, they found that in Uganda we have only about 7 million people who are employed. And of these, 3 million were employed in services. And out of those 3 million in services, 2 million were actually in trade and repair only. And now COVID has battered more that sector of trade and repair. And many of those livelihoods downtown Kampala have been lost, or they are in the process of getting vanished. And therefore, we found that already pre-COVID, Uganda's main problem was jobs. Jobs for younger people, jobs for women, jobs for people who have gone out of agriculture. It was quite difficult to find employment, because 9 in every 10 Ugandans who are outside agriculture are employed by the informal activities in the especially this greater Kampala metropolitan. And therefore, we found that these jobs which we are likely to lose, or livelihoods more, they are going to find already a precarious situation. And therefore, the task for government was very simple. Number one, to keep the few workers we have in the formal sector on the payroll, to ensure that government intervenes in the economy to support those businesses and the sectors which are employing the people already formally, not to lay them off. Two, to work hard and save livelihoods. In this case, what Katesh has been talking about in terms of supporting the SMEs that are already supporting younger people. And in that particular accord, we proposed to Minister of Finance and the government to create an SME recovery fund. Because SMEs, they are also the first one to be crowded out of the financial, the formal financial system, because they are the ones who don't have collateral. They are the ones who are deemed risky or riskier, and now COVID has made them more risky. So there was a need to create an SME recovery fund, which modalities had been worked out to bring it as a blended finance, a financing mechanism between the government and the friendly banks to SMEs. And these banks actually self-selected. There are a number of them. They were willing to lend to these SMEs at less than 12% if government was willing to invest half of that money. It's typical, the agricultural credit facility. Bring 100 billion as government. Financial institutions is first with those which are friendly to government or partly owned by government, and others which are friendly to SMEs. They were willing to offer the equivalent of 100 billion. They make, say, 200 billion, and they lend at 12% to these SMEs to recover. That gap has not been covered. Then 3, we also said that you should invest more in job-rich and growth sectors. Previously, the government has been investing to accelerate growth. But this growth has not been creating enough jobs. So there was a need now, especially that COVID has hit us, to identify areas which can accelerate recovery of the economy, the growth of the economy. We are talking about those numbers we are reading, but at the same time when it is creating jobs. And those sectors have been identified.
Name some.
Agro-processing and agribusiness is one of them. It can easily bring growth with the jobs.
Okay.
Then we have light manufacturing, but biased on production of agro inputs for Uganda and the region. There was a gap there. Then also there was assembly manufacturing which assembles things which the region imports in bulk and can easily be produced here. Invest in them. They will create a lot of jobs and at the same time be able to accelerate.
What are some of those areas?
We are talking of things to do with the plastics, to do with the radio electronics generally, repair, these accessories used for cars and electronics and so on, refrigerators and so on. There are also proposals to prepare the workforce for the new normal. Because as we are talking all this, many Ugandans are not likely to take advantage now of the opportunities being created by the government because they are not ready. People have really given up. Many younger people now, they are thinking of getting a visa and they go to United Arab Emirates or go to Europe or elsewhere because unlike us, other areas now have a problem, a shortage of labor. Why? Because their governments have pumped a lot of money in unemployment benefits. And as a result of that, people are not willing to work at certain wages. And therefore, they are attracting this type of labor. And so many younger people are running for those. So we're saying, if Uganda really is to retain its cream de la cream in labor and also deploy it in those areas we are mentioning, invest in preparing our labor workforce for the new normal, post-COVID. But most significantly, to invest in a recovery of the economy. Now, to conclude by answering your question, when you look at the budget strategy for 2021-22, it is in line with this. Only that it's a budget which is not putting quite emphatic stamp on resource allocation in line with the rhetoric. And I want to really clarify this.
Yes, clarify that. What is the rhetoric?
Yes, the
and
rhetoric.
Where is it not emphatic?
The rhetoric is, when you look at the narrative, it's what I've been mentioning.
The things you listed?
Yes. But when you come to the allocations, for example, I've told you that number one, we haven't put money in SME recovery. There is not even a single coin. And yet, policymakers in Uganda know that the economy of Uganda outside agriculture is driven by SMEs, particularly the micro and small businesses. And by definition there, you are talking of businesses which are employing up to around 50 people, from about 2 to 50 people. That's the typical business of Uganda. I know government officials, and the Honorable Bahati, when he comes online, will tell you that they have provided a myoga. And also that they have...
The parish model?
The parish model is not necessarily about this, but a myoga and UDB.
Yes.
But those two funds actually they are misfit for the category of businesses we are talking about.
Why are they misfits?
The Emyoga, they are for 18 already predetermined talents, you can call them talents, things which people have been doing already on an individual basis, and government is saying, let us put here a micro, kind of a seed money, where you can come in a group and you access this money. Now, that money is not going to go for the typical SME, downtown Kampala. They are not, they are not meant for them. Actually, the president was also clear that this money is not for these traders and all those people in town. Okay. Their money is for the youth, their money is for those who are riding border, the lady who are working on the roadside and so on. But when you are talking of these SMEs that are now leaving the buildings in Kampala empty, that are creating a crisis in the real estate sector and so on, those ones are not touched by Emyoga. Then the UDB money is for the big guys.
The big guys, like Dennis has said.
Yes, they are for the big guys. So there is that gap which we must fill, and to me it's not a very big asking really. If you want to leverage the credit which banks are lying with, because banks are now fearing to lend without de-risking that money for them. Okay. To this particular category of SMEs. So government could easily, even if actually it was borrowing, this is money which I would support 100% the government to borrow, because everywhere in the world, this is where they have put emphasis on how to recover the SMEs.
Okay. The best time for really Honorable Bahati to come in. Honorable David, are you now well connected? Honorable Bahati. David?
Now?
Good evening. Say hello to the viewer.
Good evening, Charles, and hello to all Ugandans who are viewing us tonight, and my colleagues on the panel, Katesh and your colleague. I want to congratulate you upon being elected members of Parliament and swearing in, and I wish you the very best in the new Parliament.
Thanks a lot, David. David, you're joined by our panelist, Sarah BIREETE, who is online as well through Zoom. But in the studio, we have GGOOBI, who has just finished submitting. I guess you listened to the submissions from Katesh and DENIS and GGOOBI. I thought that this is the best time for you to come in. GGOOBI has talked about good plans, but you know, that are not being followed by the budgeting. And in policy, in public policy, every plan must be followed by a budget for it to be executed or implemented. What's your take on that, starting with projects like Emyoga and financing through UDB that GGOOBI is saying are not catering for the SMEs?
Yeah, thank you very much, Charles and Stella. Good evening. I have not seen you. It is important to note, Charles, that despite the COVID pandemic, our economy remains resilient. During the economic troubles we had with COVID, we registered a growth of 2.9%. And we are now projecting 4.3% in the coming years, in the coming financial year, and 6 to 7% in the outer years. So it's important that Ugandans know that the fundamentals of our economy have remained firm, and that the economy is growing in the coming years. Coming to the topic that we are really concentrating on today, first I want to congratulate His Excellency the President, who was sworn in on the 12th of May, and to also tell you that we will be reading our budget on the 10th of June, and whoever will carry the Treasury briefcase, in that briefcase there will be a budget speech which is focusing on the policy to speak to the numbers that Parliament has already approved. As you recall, we approved this budget a few weeks ago, actually just a few weeks ago, before Parliament, the 10th Parliament closed. And therefore, it is now time to read the policies that speak to that budget. And I have listened to Honorable Katesh, I have listened to GGOOBI. The strategy that we have for the coming financial year and the numbers in the budget actually speak to each other. The strategy that we have focuses on 6 important things. The first is to maintain peace and security. And I want Ugandans not to get tired of listening to this issue of peace and security, because it is really the share of everything that we do. It focuses on building competitiveness for our country, building infrastructure, and all the things that are needed to make our economy competitive, to attract investors, to invest more in our country, create jobs, and create growth. It emphasizes agro-industrialization. And among other things, it also talks about human capital development, investing in education, investing in health, and investing in water. So these are some of the strategies that whoever will read the speech, the budget speech on the 10th of June, will really be focusing on. The small medium enterprises that Katesh and GGOOBI have been talking about, we are trying as much as possible to provide for them. The Uganda Development Bank, where we're investing now 103 billion, in addition to the 481 billion we invested this financial year, also caters for small medium enterprises. Because the minimum amount of money that UDB lends is $100,000 US, which is 360 million US. So we put money at the UDB
shillings
for big and small. But also, if you cannot find money in UDB, if you can't get money in UDB, because the question has been, can somebody in Logwa West, can somebody in Nebi Charles access UDB? The Uganda Development Bank is putting up systems and mechanisms so that the businesses that want to access money through UDB can do that through Post Bank, partnering with Post Bank and other mechanisms. And I think UDB will be coming out to really tell Ugandans how this can be done. But the minimum that you can access from UDB is 100,000, which is equivalent to 360 million Uganda shillings.
Yeah.
So if you can't access money through UDB, we created another level of emyoga. And that's what GGOOBI has talked about. You can't go to the bank. Government is coming to you in whatever area that you are concentrating on, especially 18 enterprises, and supplying money to you to use so that you can develop your business. And also, if you can't access emyoga, you cannot access UDB, we created another layer of microfinance support center and invested 27 billion. And we have also invested 100 billion for next financial for emyoga, in addition to the 260 billion that we actually invested this financial year. So there seems to be, in terms of supporting these enterprises, we seem to have some good amount of money that we invested in the economy for them to access. But as you have heard, one of the challenges that is facing our economy now is really at a micro level. the subsistence level of our economy is going to be the focus for the new government. The 3.3 million households out of the 8.5 million households in Uganda, 3.3 million households live in subsistence economy, meaning that 2 out of every 5 households are in subsistence economy. That is the major focus, honorable colleagues on the panel and those that are listening, that this new government is going to focus on. So what are we going to do to be able to lift these households who live in subsistence into the money economy? That is why we have now come up with a new strategy called the Parish Development Model, where we have 5 pillars that we are going to concentrate on. And beginning with next financial year, the emphasis will be forming a revolving fund at the parish level. So 200 billion has been invested in the next financial year, has been allocated in the next financial year to help form a revolving fund at the parish level. Use the parish development committees, the parish chiefs, we shall be organizing them, the parishes from May, the month that we are in, up to September, and then the second quarter of the financial year, a revolving fund starts. And if you are somewhere in Nairobi, in Kabaale, you are doing something that you need resources to invest, a parish model will be there for you. This is really where the emphasis of the new government will be. In addition to creating competitiveness for economy, building infrastructure. For example, in the tourism, as we get out of this COVID pandemic, in fact, we are going to be investing 495 billion to buy the vaccines. For those that will be qualifying to get the vaccine, we are investing 495 billion to buy the vaccine so that this financial year we vaccinate everybody, and we think that by doing that, we'll be helping ourselves to get out of COVID. But during this period, we're also investing and preparing for the sector that were most hit. One of the sectors that was most hit was tourism. And now, investing in roads of Kidepo, Lake Munyonyi, Mugainga in the south, are some of the efforts that government is putting in place to make sure that when the tourism comes, recovers, it should find us when we are actually ready to receive both foreign and domestic tourists. So in the coming financial year and in the coming budget speech, a number of these areas, whoever will read the speech, will be able to find in that budget briefcase that you normally see Minister of Finance carry, some of these areas that I'm mentioning. And I think GGOOBI has been fully involved in these discussions right away from when we were first hit by COVID up to now. And I get a bit surprised that he can still see some gaps. He should have actually helped to provide solutions to fill those gaps. So we have tried our level best to make sure that what we say is actually what we do. What we talk about strategy is equal to what we are allocating in our budget. And if you will go through the numbers, you will see that members who are just coming in, one of the areas that we are going to really focus on will be oversight, will be mobilizing the community to get out of this subsistence level into the money economy. And you see that the numbers speak to the strategy, and the strategy speaks to the numbers.
Honorable, a follow-up question I want to ask a clarification about. Do you have this money? We shall soon be asking Katesh to advise us on, broadening the tax base. But critics have talked about the plan, the budget, but also allocating or finding money to allocate to that budget. Do you have this money? Does Uganda government have this money? Are we going to make this money? Because that you should be telling us, this is what we are doing to get the money to inject in some of these plans. Do we have that money? Shall we?
So next financial year, the budget that Parliament approved last week but one was 44.7 trillion. Out of that, we do expect to mobilize resources using URA and non-tax revenue close to 22.4 trillion. The balance of it will be mobilized through grants, budget support, and also through resource mobilization, what other people call borrowing. The source of the budget, as you know, Charles, and those who are listening to us, you get money from the revenue you are collecting, money from the grants, if any, and also money, if you cannot finance the two with the two sources, then you go for borrowing. And because of the ambitious plan we have to be able to make our economy competitive, to be able to provide enough environment for Ugandans to take advantage for the economic opportunities that they are in now, we signed the final financing agreement for oil. His Excellency the President tomorrow will be signing the host agreement in Dar es Salaam. And there are quite a number, massive opportunities for the pipeline project. People who are going to be the welders, people who are going to provide the materials to build this pipeline, and others. To be able to build all this infrastructure, the airport in Hoima is going on, the road infrastructure, we will need to get enough resources. Unfortunately, we can't get all the money from taxes. While we have developed a very robust domestic revenue mobilization, a strategy that will lift those who are in informal trade into formal trade, sealing all the loopholes that we have in the rentals and other areas. We, despite all those efforts that we have put in place, will not be able to raise the 44.7 trillion. So what we have done, we have raised a little bit of our public debt from a little bit above the threshold of 50% to 51.9%. And it will go up a little bit in the coming years to 53, and then come down to 48 to 44, because we will have finished all the infrastructure that we need to make our economy competitive, and also in the outer years start collecting resources from the oil once it starts flowing, and then we start stabilizing. So we shall have all the resources, but not all the resources will come from domestic revenue. Some of the resources will come from borrowing, and as we borrow, we are very cautious that we cannot put our country in danger of debt, but at the same time, we need these infrastructures to be able to make our economy competitive, make it grow, so that in the next 5 years, we stabilize.
Okay, thanks, Honorable Minister. Let me bring in Sarah BIREETE. Sarah, good evening.
Good evening, Charles, and good evening, fellow panelists.
Are you hearing us? Good. Are you hearing clearly?
Yes, I am.
Thanks. We want to bring you on board. You've had the discussions already, and crowned right now by the Honorable Minister, who has just finished being in charge of this docket, especially for planning and overseeing the execution of some of the plans. But he ended on a note of, here and there saying that there will be money, not all from domestically generated revenue. And that brings us to an area that I also want us to touch on, going round, starting with you. Our debt levels. Do you think that in the next coming financial year, starting with the next financial year, that Uganda will have capacity to have money to put in all these nice plans, nice projects, to put money in our pockets? Do you think that government has that capacity? Do you see it? What must it do better?
Yeah, well, Charles, you know, I listened to Dr. RAMATHAN, and the plans he was sharing are really fantastic. But when you hear the plans for the 5 years and the submissions of Honorable David Bahati, you can imagine that this is a government that is just coming to power. First of all, we know the whole world is experiencing the effects of COVID on the economies. But when wind blows and lifts the shelter, you know, it undresses whatever was covered by the shelter for everybody to see inside. So what COVID pandemic has done is to undress nations, especially in areas of the economy and health infrastructure. So when it comes to our economy, our post-COVID interventions will be largely determined by the behavior of our country in the period before COVID, and that preparedness will determine whether we have capacity to cushion the citizens, the businesses, the tax base against the shocks of COVID pandemic or not. So the period where we are coming from, we have seen a lot of fiscal indiscipline, a lot of wastage in the budgets, lack of efforts, you know, systematic efforts to broaden the tax base. And that's why, like RAMATHAN Kiriare said, the small and medium, you know, term enterprises were the most affected, as well as agriculture, especially during the period of lockdown. Agriculture was affected because they could not access inputs because of transportation challenges, and then the closure of markets that affected the market for fresh produce during the time of lockdown. But away from that, do we have capacity to, you know, to exercise fiscal responsibility as a country, to manage the skyrocketing public debt, and be able to revamp our economies? I am really skeptical on that area, and I'm looking forward to what the Minister of Finance will present as the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility in the first 3 months of Parliament. If you look at the fiscal discipline of the outgoing regime, which is more or less the same as the incoming regime because of the top leadership, it does not give any hope for the country that we have capacity to recover the economy. And we can compare with what other countries are doing, Charles. I know that there were efforts by Bank of Uganda to lower the interest on loans, but you know, some of those directives are not even supervised and followed by some of the bank actors. But many countries have focused on ensuring that there is cash flow in the businesses to keep the jobs, to keep the businesses afloat, and that keeps the tax base. But what we are doing on our part, we are increasing the tax burden on the collapsing and shrinking economy. We are not focusing on increasing the cash flow in our businesses. There are no proper incentives that have been extended to the small and medium-term enterprises in this country to ensure that we keep these businesses afloat, as well as keep the jobs. And once you lose jobs and businesses, it was clearly said that the shopping malls are emptying because people cannot afford rent. So once you have businesses closing, that shrinks the tax base as well as the employment scale of a country. And there is no domestic base, domestic revenue base, where the country should generate incomes. And as clearly demonstrated, we have made a shortfall of 1.7 trillion in the last estimates for 2020 financial year. So once we are not systematically ensuring that businesses keep afloat, we maintain and help cushion the businesses to maintain cash flow and keep employment. You lose domestic revenue, and once you lose domestic revenue, then you remain with what Honorable Bahati did best in the last term of parliament, where he was largely Minister for Supplementary Budgets and Loans. So once we cannot fix that, as well as fiscal discipline as a country, then I don't see us fixing the economy in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sarah. Honorable David, you will gather those submissions with the ones following from the colleagues here. But at this point now, going forward, I want us to be more fast, and feel free to interject, any of you. If you want to interject in an area, you can, with my permission, do so. Feel free. But I want to start with going back to Katesh, the question of money availability. I like the fact that your background is in custom. You have been working to generate money and to ensure that Ugandans get money. You were a commissioner in Uganda Revenue Authority. What exactly, do you think, first of all, from your experience and going forward, do you think we are going to have money to spend on these nice projects that government has, it has brought out? What do you think we must do? Sarah referred to the tax base. We have had situations where people have complained. The economy is already hit. Everybody is losing money. And while some countries are actually injecting money to, help support businesses, you're overtaxing people. Now, what do you think must be done along that area?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think if you talk to any of the MPs, they will tell you among the top challenges they complain about is infrastructure, water, electricity. So there is pressure on government to invest in infrastructure. And if you look at our revenue, it's interesting that a few years back, not long ago, we had the total corrections was about 6,000 billion in 2010, which is now just the...
That's about 28, about 19.
Now, yeah, so which
about
is...
About 19 trillion? Around there?
No, 6 trillion. If you look down now, that is just the budget of the transport infrastructure.
Yeah.
So as a country, we have the revenue growth has been improving over the years. That right now, government is able to tackle some of these infrastructure needs. But the money is not enough. So you cannot avoid borrowing. Borrowing will continue. And like the minister has said, I want to agree with him that in the current debt, it is still sustainable. But of course, it leaves little room for accommodating adverse shocks if they happen to our country. So we are still lucky that we don't have those, perhaps, big droughts hitting the country, etc., that would put us to a challenge. But I think if we are able to get these loans, particularly concessional loans, and invest them timely, not borrow and keep the money, then we pay interest. Currently, I think the repayments is about 22% of our budget, and invest in this infrastructure, then we are responding to the demand of the people. So government is doing the right thing. Back to the revenue, definitely our tax base is still low. If you look at the people who are bearing the burden, I think our tax register is about 1.2 million taxpayers, which means that we still have work to do, particularly on the indirect taxes. Now, indirect taxes improve when there is high consumption. If, for example, you have everybody able to spend, has surplus to consume, soda, water, cement, then you know that the VAT will be collected. So it goes back to the issue of household incomes. How many people in Sheema, in Kabaale, are consuming cement now? How many are they are consuming what we would call these luxuries? So that's why the programs that the Honorable BAHATI talked about, the parish model, we all believe that it will stimulate a lot of production at the parish level. And once that production is stimulated, then perhaps government can be able to make serious attempts to formalize some of these businesses. But of course, bearing in mind that there has to be time, these businesses have to be nurtured and they grow, then people have money to spend, and as a result, you have more indirect taxes collected. Now, if you have dealt with that, then you come to the efficiency of the collection. There are efforts that URA has been putting in place, the fiscal receipting system. Once you have compliance improving, then you expect the revenue to increase, and you expect the tax base to be expanding. So you are dealing with this at many angles. Stimulating production at different levels, formalizing the prayers, but of course ensuring that there is compliance. But at the same time, as you have seen over the years, we have so many industries which are coming up. And these investments usually take some time to grow. By the time you recover, you get corporate income tax from someone who has set up a factory. It takes some time. Maybe they are paying huge costs. They have a lot of investments in machinery. They are recovering the costs. So we expect that some of the industries we've seen over the years, popping up, with time they will become profitable and start contributing to the economy. But while they produce, the efforts have to be very much on the indirect taxes, the VAT, ensure there is compliance, but compliance without demand. If Coca-Cola is not able to sell the soda, Renzo is not able to sell the water, if the sales does not increase because there is no demand, because someone does not have the surplus to drink water, then you do not expect, the taxes to increase. So you have to look at it from different angles, and I think we all have hope in the next budget. If we are able to focus on implementation and we make sure that this program is successfully implemented, and I can see the energy in the new members of parliament. We spent 3 weeks in Chankwanzi. There is a lot of renewed energy. Most of us went through tough campaigns. We made a lot of promises. We do not want to repeat the mistakes. Otherwise, we will get out in the next 5 years. So we are going to focus on implementation. If money has been allocated for a certain program in my area, I'll have to make sure that it is implemented, without doubt. And once that is done, then you expect to see the yield. And once the yield is there, then you have, more consumption. And that's how the money circulates in the economy. Okay. It just keeps moving around, but moving around without growth does not help. It must keep growing. Ramathan here usually gives an example of the 10,000 shillings, how it rotates within Kampala within like 6 prayers. That 10,000 must grow to 20 if it has to make sense. If it remains flat, then you do not expect to see resultant increase, particularly in direct taxes.
Good. Let's take a break. When I come back from that break, then I will bring in Ramathan and Dennis to weigh in on the question of widening the tax base. Shall we have the money, or it will just remain good plans, good budget, but without money supporting it? Let's go for the break now.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home, or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we love, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Welcome back from the break. It's getting interesting. This is Behind the Headlines, and we are discussing the economy. There is a new government in place, and that is supposed to start work, that has started work, of course. There is a new parliament almost fully constituted. By Monday, we will have parliament, 11th parliament, fully constituted when the parliament, the 11th parliament, selects its new speaker or its new leaders. And so work must begin. The elections are behind us, but how does that work begin? There must be money in the pockets, there must be money in projects, and that is what we are looking at. Where do we get that money from? Can the economy rebound post-COVID, amidst the COVID turmoil, but life must continue? That's the discussion we are having, and that discussion is being had with the presence of the former Minister of Finance in charge of planning, David BAHATI. We have Councillor Sarah BIREETE, she works for Center for Constitutional Governance. We have Honorable DICKSON KATESHUMBWA, who is the MP for Sheema Municipality, the new MP. We have DENIS NYANGWESO from Samia Bugwe Central, and we have economics lecturer GGOOBI Ramathan from Makerere University Business School. Before we went into the break, Dennis, your colleague to the left, KATESHUMBWA, painted some hope that there is optimism that this can be done. But he added, if this is done. Now, the ifs are the ones that I'm interested in us answering for the people out there. Do you think that these ifs will be met? How do we widen the tax base? There are some people who I read somewhere that the almost, is it 70, and KATESHUMBWA will help us. It's only about 3 districts in Uganda, Kampala, Wakiso, is it Mpigi or Mukono, that pay almost 70% of the entire, revenue base that we have. Can't it be widened? What are other districts doing? Or does it mean that there are too poor people in those districts, and we have 146 of them? Does it mean that people in majority of the districts of Uganda are actually not productive?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. It is getting interesting here now, because you realize that the ifs did not only come from Honorable Katesh, they came from Honorable BAHATI, who has been at the helm of preparing this document, which the executive is going to read on 10th of June. You realize also that in the remarks of my friend here, Dr. Ramathan, I'm privileged to sit here with him, once again having sat with him in an economics class for 3 years at university. He noted very well, with a lot of hope, that he participated in a post-COVID recovery and discussions and advised the executive. And Honorable BAHATI acknowledges the discussion and promises or assures us that most of the key issues Dr. Ramathan here talked about were a consideration and a part of the budget which is supposed to be implemented in the next financial year. However, you also realize that the former minister is not sure about the availability, especially when it comes to even borrowing. He just didn't want to possibly confirm that the other option of raising this money is through increasing the public debt, although he says that even if the public debt increases, we have not reached a crisis level, and this is also confirmed by Katesh. Now, to widen the tax base is possibly what we should look at. And in the interventions for post-COVID recovery, what sectors are we investing in, and what is the multiplier effect to generate these taxes? Because definitely, if we intervene correctly in supporting some of these SMEs, one, they will create employment. Two, they will improve production, and definitely we shall have a widened tax or improved tax base. However, the multiplier effect is what I'm trying to discuss here. We rightly pointed out that in order for us as members of parliament to perform and secure our future, we need to support the government, the executive, to deliver on the promises as are laid down in the manifesto of the NRM party. However, we have issues with the interventions.
Which ones?
The government is talking about infrastructure development. Infrastructure development is good. It's long term. It is 3-5 years. We are talking about 1 year. So given the fact that the infrastructure development will not immediately create a multiplier effect. The smaller businesses still don't operate. When they go to borrow, as Ramathan talks about, the government interventions, even the small SMEs which have managed to succeed in securing the conditions for borrowing, the borrowing is still very high. And because of that, they are taking so long to recover. As they take so long to recover, they still ask for either concessions or waivers in order to first recover before they can meet some of the statutory obligations like the taxation. So the other day when the Parliament was closing, they passed a number of bills, taxation bills. We are optimistic that the bills that were passed at the closing of the last Parliament will help government to generate or improve this tax base and be able to bring in some of this money and solve or answer the ifs, the many ifs that have come up. Shall we have money? If by July to September we are able to generate the additional income arising out of the amendments of the tax bills, then possibly we shall be able to generate some money and be able to kickstart some of the government programs. But Charles, before I leave here, I wanted also to note that we have just run 1 year in NDP 3. And you note that even the 1 year we have run, the government is just, the planning processes are just being, they're just settling down. Most people even didn't know that we have moved to NDP 3, the pillars of NDP 3, even the civil servants, the implementers of the programs under NDP 3 have not really aligned themselves to NDP 3. Now, we are starting a financial year where NDP 3 is going into year 2. We have brought in a parish model. And the minister is saying he has, in the budget, there's an allocation of 200 billion to kickstart the parish model. This parish model, to operate, is talking about the parish development committee under the leadership of the parish supervisor, who is the parish chief. We were having such a discussion in Chankwanza about the parish model and how the new parliament should support the government to fast track its implementation and also monitor. We realized that some of us who were just from the campaigns, looking at the staffing levels in the districts, the parish model, the supervisors of this parish model don't exist. What does this mean? It means that the government has to recruit. Wage is not one of the key priorities under the budget strategy. So we are envisaging a problem very soon where even the supervision, implementation and value for money for the 200 billion as put in the budget to kickstart the parish model, we don't know how this is going to happen. And as Honorable Katesh put it, our interest is how do we improve the lives of our people? Because you continue leading poor people, you are already in danger yourself. You find a member of parliament being treated like an NGO because you have to support people. People have no livelihood, people have no production, and they cannot be supported. So all the wrath, if it cannot stop on you, it even extends to the government. So we see that we have a beneficial partnership we have to play. Support the government through improved supervision. We have, we were in Chankwanza when the last parliament was discussing the parish model. So we're a bit busy, but we'll take off time to understand, because within that retweet we also had the presentation about the same. But we now need to compare as we relate with the local governments to see their challenges in view of this parish model. Charles, some of the implementers of this parish model, the civil servants, they don't appreciate this. Unfortunately, under NDP3, as I will task my colleague, my classmate to substantiate, there is a component of mindset change. Unfortunately, it's not one of the first components of implementation under NDP3. And you know, mind change, mindset is the key to drive the processes, the decision making. We don't know, he was so instrumental in coming up with NDP3. Dr. Ramathan, why don't we invest money in mindset change to prepare ourselves, our communities, our civil servants at local government level, to appreciate and help us implement the parish model?
Okay. Yes, Dickson, before I bring in Ramathan.
Well, I just wanted to...
By the way, there is someone who has sent a question for you. This person is called Bonnie Kagawa. He says, Charles, thanks for the show. My name is Bonnie, and I study Bonnie from Makerere Business School. My question is to Dickson. I am happy, Dickson, you have joined the implementers of policy at Parliament, and he used to be the revenue collector at Revenue Authority. And I understand that our GDP to tax ratio of Uganda is among the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa. How ready are you, and what new tax regime proposals are you going to give to Parliament to widen the tax base during and after COVID?
Yeah, you see, over the years, when I was still involved in the tax policy measures as an administrator, every time we tried to come up with measures on tax, when you added up the measures, you would find that there is very little increment. Because basically you're not going to wake up and put 500 shillings on petroleum to generate more revenue. You will cripple the economy. So the hope may not necessarily be in the tax measures that have been introduced. But the point I want to make here is that we have a lot of our people who are in subsistence agriculture, right? And the effort that we are trying to, the government is looking at, or which we should be looking at, is how do we transfer those people from subsistence into producing a surplus efficiently. So if you are planting, say, avocados, it's not just for your consumption, but for sale, and not just a local sale on the road, but an export market. So that brings us to the issue of the market. Now, as long as you still have someone who has 6 pineapples on the street selling them 10,000, it means the farmer is not getting perhaps not getting the amount of money that he should be deserving. So we need to look at how do we stimulate production efficiently, move people from subsistence, and once they have gotten out, then we'll look at the issue of the market. Because if you look at the taxes, for example, from international trade, the importation, only about 23% of the goods that come into the country are taxable. The rest are capital goods, exempted goods that is going into industry. So you have put incentives in place to promote industries. You have put incentives in agriculture to promote agriculture, right? Mm-hmm. Now the issue is, how do we evaluate the efficiency in agriculture? Issues of regulation. If you have challenges in regulation, in vaccine, in chemicals, like recently we have a problem of foot and mouth. We have to deal with it. The person who is involved in the cattle corridor are having a problem. So once if we don't deal with those challenges that are preventing people from efficiently producing, and then we deal with the market. We have all this wide market, Congo, South Sudan. I don't agree. I agree very much about the issue of, for example, roads. Roads have been opened up to connect all these markets. So our goods can move to all these markets. But we need to look beyond, perhaps the EAC market, regional, and be able to have trade policies that can enable us to tap into other markets. We need to see our pineapples in Dubai, in the European Union. We need to see our avocados. Kenya is getting a lot of money from House of Avocado exporting to the US, to China. So our people need to be sensitized to get out of that traditional agriculture, but we must be able to deal with the issues of standards. We must be able to deal with the issues of market and policy so that the yield is better. Once that is done, Charles, then automatically you have people who have money to spend. They will drink more water, more soda, and then you have indirect taxes being collected. But you cannot expect revenue growth to keep growing every year from the tax measures. You will run out of measures. There are times we used to sit down and look for where to tax, and you can't find it. The growth in the economy, organic growth, stimulated by all these things I've talked about, will lead to the expanded production and consumption, which will lead to more tax.
Okay, Honorable Bahati wanted to respond to some. You want to respond to him, but he wants to already respond to you. Honorable Bahati, who should come first?
I haven't.
Can you first take Gobi's additional submissions and then you respond once, or you want to come in now?
Well, I just wanted to come in, and Gobi can come in still. I'll respond to him since we have the same thinking. Now, our colleague from Busia has created an impression that we are not sure whether we are going to actually have the money to finance the budget. And I see also in the studio a number of ifs. I think the time has moved on to really now think about when and what we should be. We know what needs to be done. The point is we have got to mobilize everybody to be on board and get things done. That's why we are moving towards a parish model to make sure that these 3.3 million households come out of the subsistence economy into the money economy. My colleague, we are sure about where we are going to get the money to finance the budget, because you cannot present a budget to the House, to Parliament, which is not balanced. You cannot pass a budget that you are not sure that you are going to have the resources, despite the fact that it's a cash budget, but we know that 22.4 trillion is going to be collected from domestic revenue. They are going to get the grants, which have also been ascertained, and the balance of the 7.8 trillion will be mobilized through external sources to fund the budget. So it is true that we know where we are going to get the money from. Secondly, the issue of the parish model, and I think it's good that some of our colleagues made a presentation at Chankwanzi to the new colleagues, and will continue to engage with the new colleagues in Parliament to ensure that they are brought on board, because they are going to play a fundamental role. at the constituency level, at the parish level. The money to pay the parish chiefs is already part of the resources that are already appropriated, my colleague from Busia. So the resources are going to be there. Half of the parish chiefs are already in place. Out of 10,500 parishes in Uganda, we already have 5,000 parishes, and the remaining are going to be recruited in the next 3 months to be able to start the process of the Broadening fund. The issue of mindset change is part of the key pillars actually we are working on at the parish level, because everybody must be mobilized, must have the right mindset for development, and this is what we are doing when it comes to the parish model, among other pillars like infrastructure, a financial revolving fund, and others. So we with your support, with the support of Parliament, with the support of everybody, because you see, we're trying long and hard to make sure we put coins in the empty pockets of some of the families in Uganda. But government will not be putting money, cash in the pockets of Ugandans. We will create environment that put cash in the empty pockets of some Ugandans who don't have cash in them. And when everybody is in the money economy, then in a way we are actually mobilizing and widening the tax base. So it's not enough also only to look at the small medium enterprises in urban centers. It's actually necessary. That's why you see that His Excellency the President talks about mass actions. We are talking about mass actions. A parish development model is a mass action. Everybody getting involved. And when we do that, when we have the right systems in place and everybody is in a money economy, in a way, you are mobilizing and widening the tax base. Because if you have money at the household, you get your money, you buy a matchbox, you buy soap, you buy salt. This salt is being manufactured somewhere, and it is taxed on it. This is what we are doing, Charles, to make sure that we mobilize the whole population. And the emphasis, the other point that you see in the speech, is about import substitution and export promotion. And in fact, when COVID came, we were very, very, very excited about the opportunities it created for import substitution and export promotion, because every country was thinking about themselves. And you can see now all the sanitizers are being manufactured here. All the things that we are using actually in the fight against COVID, apart from a few, are manufactured here. And when we add value to what, I think Katesh was making that point about value addition, which is part of the development model, because when we produce, we want to add value at the parish model, at the parish level. And when this is done massively, then you are creating an economy that is inclusive, growth that is inclusive. What I think Bobby keeps talking about, Bobby keeps pointing at this. Growth must be inclusive, and can only be inclusive when the households in Uganda, or the households, everybody, creating opportunities not for a few, but for everybody in Uganda to participate in the economy. That's what will actually help our economy grow. That's what will help Ugandans to access money and build their own economies. I think it's important to understand that a plan that is not financed remains a draft plan. So we have a national development plan in place, and this was approved by Parliament. All the stakeholders, including the board who participated. We must mobilize resources, and you cannot have resources if you have a budget appropriated, or data appropriated, or resource mobilized externally. So it's important that you, while we listen to your words, we also look at we and the truth that this budget plan must be financed. Either financed through domestic revenue or externally financed. And we have got to have somebody to do this job. And I'm glad that I've done it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me bring in GGOOBI,
yes,
at this point. As you weigh in on the tax-based debate, there is a question from someone called Eric. Good evening, Charles. Just want to thank you for the show. Please, oh, this is just a compliment. Please, but let me read it. Please give greetings to Professor GGOOBI. He was my one of my best lecturers at MUBS, and I am called Eric. I am watching you from Lira.
Thank you. Since he was my student, actually, I was going to begin from there. You know, in his submission, the Honorable Bahati said he was surprised that I was still dissatisfied with the shape of a budget in which I've been a
participant.
I'm one of those who is quite difficult to impress. Some of my students know that I can't easily say because you have gotten a 70%, then you're excellent. Definitely, let me say this, and to the satisfaction of my good friend Honorable Bahati, who has been very, very instrumental, by the way, in playing the role of improving the budgeting and planning in the Ministry of Finance. I've already said that, you know, he's very good at rosy scenario aspects, which a Minister of Finance should do. And he has been very instrumental in that area. And Charles, when you look at this budget which is going to be read for 2021-22, I don't think Uganda has ever had a budget which is as transformative and quite clear-headed like this budget. It's a good budget. Budgeting has improved. But still, there are gaps in allocative efficiency. And I think this is the area where I was pointing at, that at a time when you have a dual challenge, because now we have two major challenges in Uganda. We had already started on dealing with the challenge, which Honorable Bahati is talking about, of reducing subsistence, or fighting subsistence, because so many Ugandans are working just to survive. They're working so hard just to produce food, and they sleep. You know, when you hear numbers, people don't reflect on what statistics mean. When UBOS comes and tells you that 69% of the people in agriculture are working for own consumption, they are saying there are 7 people in 10 who are farming. And that is ridiculous. And government has been working, especially through Operation Wealth Creation, to fight that. And I'm very happy that that battle is ongoing now and is being now helped by bringing in this new model of the parish. Because now the parish model, people have reduced it to financing, especially those who don't understand it. That, you know, what is this little money going to do? Only 400 billion. Now you have even cut it to 200 billion to be given to all parishes, each about 30 million shillings. What does 30 million shillings do? Parish model is not about the money, the financing. Parish model is about actually now taking the government to the people, so that government can solve people's problems in the constituencies of these honorables. There's no government there. Government is here in Kampala, where the people are planning, they do budget, then they take a few white elephant projects in different areas. Now, I was so happy with the government passing this parish model, as we championed it so hard in the manifesto, and engaged the head of state, who was the owner of the manifesto, that now we should go parish mode, and something which Ugandans should support all the way, because it has, like Honorable Bahati has explained, over about 7 pillars of which the financing one is just one of them, but people are overemphasizing it. It's not about that little money, but it's about the effectiveness we are going to see now at the parish level. And the good thing, he has cleared on how it is going to be implemented. But now, as we are happy with that, also we need to implement the government rationalization with this budget. And those who are going in parliament, please make sure that government gets efficient. Government has talked of rationalizing agencies. It shouldn't stop at only agencies, because these agencies are going back to ministries. Are the ministries very clean and efficient? This also needs to be done.
But that's something we are going to discuss one of these days comprehensively. Yes. Because if you opened up 100 agencies and corporations and all, they were employing so many people and paying taxes, then you are withdrawing them.
You said you are going to discuss
we
it.
are going to
you
discuss
wait for it. It's there, and we shall discuss.
You are the one who preempted me.
And the demerits. Then I'm so happy with also the plan for government to support the entertainment sector to recover. Because this is what is employing so many younger people in the country. The security aspect, government is putting a lot of emphasis on ensuring that Uganda remains stable and safe for everybody to do business. Good. And the food security aspect. So it is a budget which is pointing to the right aspects. On the issue of the debt, I think the issue now which Honorable Bahati and others in the ministry need to be more preoccupied with is how do we recreate fiscal space so that we are able in the future to borrow, to continue borrowing without hurting the private sector and also without hurting the overall economy, the macroeconomy. Because no country can really run without borrowing. I know here we are so obsessed with debt, everybody talks about debt. I've always been on record saying that in areas concerning the debt sustainability, Uganda got a very good beginning in 2008. When the leadership then in the Ministry of Finance, led by Dr. Suruma, they helped Uganda avoid the mistakes which many sub-Saharan African countries went into, and that is getting private debt, the Eurobonds. Many countries which got Eurobonds, which jumped on that craze of Eurobonds, and even here there were people who were pushing for them, but Honorable Suruma and his colleagues then, they said no, we are going to borrow concessionally and also borrow here, home, and a few other friendly sources. And it helped us to keep our debt within a range which maintained fiscal space. Now, usually fiscal space is for the rainy day. Like now we have had COVID. In COVID time, you can't expect a lot of money from businesses to tax them. You have to borrow. And that's why government has been borrowing like so many other governments around the world. All of them have been borrowing. But now the thing is, how do we create space? Because we are not going to stop needing money. To me, I think we need to review some of these projects and the way they are initiated and designed, and some of them which are running, the way they are being implemented. Those that we feel can be renegotiated, let them be renegotiated. There are always those clauses in whatever agreement or contract you go into. Let us ensure that we don't tie all much of our fiscal space in projects which are not functioning. And this, I think it is one of those things we have been discussing, and we need to implement it. Now, lastly, on the tax base, I think first and foremost, that's why I was saying we need to recover these businesses, because the taxes are gotten from businesses. And Katesh, I think, was the one who was mentioning it, was very right. You can't tax a business which is not making money. You can't also ensure, get businesses to make money when the people don't have incomes. And the good thing is, government is now putting more emphasis on addressing the household incomes. And this is where NDP3 is putting its main objective. Actually, the goal of NDP3 is to grow incomes of Ugandans by taking the economy to the people. Because this economy, which has been only around here in a few hands, and it has been a problem, and there are certain things we shall be showing you people on how the economy has been structured, operating at diminishing returns to ensure that which employ people, and especially taking the economy to rural areas. But we need to fix also gaps in collection. There are gaps there. Katesh, you are in URA, but you will find that in some of these businesses which are supposed to pay tax, they under-declare, some of them. And they make the money, but they are taking the money which is meant for government, and they are not handing it over to government. But most importantly, we need to understand that the economy of Uganda is structured in a way. And people need to understand this. Like one of my colleagues now we teach with was asking Katesh about widening this tax so that the tax to GDP ratio can be improved. When you look at agriculture, Charles, agriculture now contributes 23% of GDP. But this agriculture, as we have said, it is largely subsistence. Now, subsistence cannot be taxed. Exactly. Because someone doesn't have money. UBOS has computed that, you have produced 23% of the $40 billion that Uganda created this year. But that money, government cannot tax it because it's not there. People are just producing food, they eat, they sell some at the roadside to buy sauce. So you can't tax the money for sauce. The other one is the informal. This informal economy here in Kampala and other urban areas is contributing 28% of GDP. Now, informal economy, much as is eligible for tax, is difficult to tax because you can't easily identify them. They can easily hide. Like recently when police impounded the borders of during the swearing in. One of the younger men who follows me on Twitter said that he's owning 87 borders.
A young man.
A younger man is there. He's owning 87 borders. Now, this one is very difficult to tax, but he's a very rich person. A border is about 4 million shillings. Yeah. 87 borders that times 4 million.
10, that is 40 times 100, that is 400 million.
And he's making...
Just remove about 20 million.
Yeah. And he's making a lot of money per year. But he's not paying tax, direct tax at least, to government. Okay, indirectly, he buys fuel and
he
so
repairs
on.
It, parts.
But informal businesses are difficult to tax. Then public infrastructure. Uganda has been mainly pumping money in infrastructure development. Now, you can't tax this infrastructure. That also has been contributing about 8% of GDP. So you are talking
how about the challenge that many contractors talk about, that a lot of money goes, like now it is 6 trillion, goes into that sector, and yet the biggest players, the biggest investors in that area are foreigners.
Yeah.
So we are taking most of our money to foreign countries by giving them the...
Yes, the local content aspects we can discuss or raise them, but I wanted to first make a point, my point, on the tax aspect, on why you see that Uganda's GDP is large, but the tax we are getting as a percentage of GDP is low. That's what the younger man was asking from MOOBs. It's because now you are talking of 60% of the GDP of Uganda, either unavailable for tax, because it's in subsistence, also on, or very difficult to tax. And living only about 40% of the economy you are talking about for the people in URA to go around and tax. So it becomes therefore incumbent for the next government beginning this June when the budget is read, I mean July when the financial year starts, that we put a lot of emphasis on getting the economy of Uganda's, the structure of the economy, work for government to get revenue and also for people to get income. And in that case, it goes without saying that the efforts to commercialize agriculture must go beyond just rhetoric, just talking, must be tangible on the ground. If it is parish model we are talking about, we are going to pass it through, let us ensure that this model is implemented effectively.
Okay.
2, manufacturing. Ensure that we create more factory jobs. And right now I'm finalizing a study on industrial parks. Our industrial parks, about now 9 of them, which have been prioritized, they have attracted a lot of these farms. But these farms are talking of key challenges, especially concerning, again, things which government must do, infrastructure. The issue of electricity. Electricity is on and off, fluctuating a lot. Leave alone the cost. They are not talking a lot about the cost because they are the president has really helped in pushing for the cost. They are paying some competitive rates. So not the best, but they are a bit happy with them. But now the electricity is fluctuating. They need direct lines. This will require investment to get electricity to them, to get water, to get this management of the drainage and so on, like in some of them, like in Namamv and so on, to ensure that these factories can really operate at least 70% of capacity. Because now most of them, we are reporting capacity of between 40 to 55% capacity. And you can't create jobs with that. You need to get them to work, plus modern services. And this is where I was emphasizing and re-emphasize that we need to ensure that the little money that we have in the budget is going, because now we are fiscally constrained, that you can't expand as you would have wanted because of COVID. You can't get resources to expand the budget. Let that constraint we are having, prioritize it on the recovery of the sectors which are supporting growth and jobs, and then also prioritize it on ensuring that we get the economy to the households so that they can be able to earn.
Okay, we need to, unfortunately, time is not our best ally. We need to start winding up. We need to actually wind up now because we are a few minutes to the next day. And but Sarah, I wanted you to touch on the question of the gaps, the pilferage, the question of corruption. I need a message from you on the challenge of corruption and how that needs to be tackled as we go into this, new rejuvenation of the economy and the trying to ensure that it can, if the economy can really get rebound. In a minute or two, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Let me first thank Honorable Kateshi and Dr. Ngori for the good proposals. But I also want to underscore the fact that in Uganda, our previous challenges have not been lack of what to do. It is lack of action. In most cases, we are spot on what needs to be done, but things are never done. So we stop at talking. I hope we shall see more of action in the next 5 years, because we have never, we have never been short of what needs to be done. But the problem is the implementers, the people in charge of this country. Even when budgets are made, just give a new budget 2 or 3 months, there will be requests for supplementary, requests for reallocation, which is an abuse of budget processes, really, and it needs to stop. So, but on the question of corruption and wastage, we have the institutions in place. We have the Auditor General's report that is never acted on. We have courts that have resorted to persecution instead of fighting corruption. So I don't really know what this government can do. Because taking an example for, our neighbors in Tanzania and Magufuli, we know that once the leadership, at least from Magufuli's example, that once the leadership is determined to fight corruption, then they fight it, and there is nothing that stops them. So I think it's our question is lack of political commitment to fight corruption. There is a lack of action on issues. IGG's reports are there, Auditor General's reports are there. There are even, other institutions created, like the institution in the State House, but there is nothing tangible they are doing. And the latest investigative report is that we lose a quarter of budgetary money through corruption and abuse. So when we are talking of the gaps in terms of resource generation, and you have a quarter of the budget money that you lose every year, I think the leadership needs to commit corruption, fighting corruption beyond lip service.
Okay, Sarah. Honorable Bahati, I beg your indulgence so that you wind up. You are the last. Let me ask your colleagues here, DENIS and Katesh, to just use 1 minute each to make their last points going forward. And then I will come to you, Honorable Bahati, so that you wrap up the discussion. DENIS.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
Going forward, what you, from whatever limb you are picking it from?
I am happy that starting July, we are going to implement the parish model. And I've been assured by the minister who was in charge of the preparation of this, that the issue of mindset change is going to be very key. Yes. Picking it from Ramathan, who says that the parish model aspect is not about going to create production.
No, to give money.
To give money at the parish. It's taking the government at the parish such that at that smaller unit, people can feel what government is doing in terms of what is planning for them, and also monitoring. So I am very happy that the parish model has been adopted and approved, and already money has been put in place to start it. As a member of this parliament, I just want to pledge, because we had these discussions with my colleagues even when we were in Chankwanz, about the need to support, embrace it, support it, explain it to our people, but most importantly, monitor and supervise it, such that government can get value for money, our people can get out of poverty, they can run out of subsistence agriculture, get into commercial agriculture, add value, then the government will remain with the other aspect of looking for markets for these products and also possibly expand now the revenue options of how do we now start picking money from some of these farmers who have become commercial and who are producing for the market.
Okay, someone called Patrick says, Charles, I'm loving the show today. Professor GGOOBI should be made our next Bank of Uganda governor.
You have given me jobs.
And then Moses says, my area MP is articulating issues. Honorable NYANGWESO, thanks. And then this person must have worked in Revenue Authority, because the person says also my former commissioner. Thanks, Moses, and I thought there is another message. Maybe most of the questions are for Honorable Bahati, but Katesh, you first make your final point, and then I will read some 2 or 3 of them for Honorable Bahati to use for responding.
Yeah, thank you very much, and appreciate the contribution by the colleagues and the Honorable Bahati. I think for me, the next 5 years, I'm optimistic, and my source of optimism that things will be different this time is from the 3 weeks we spent in Chankwanzi. His Excellency the President ideologically focused the members, but also the kind of elections we had and the crop of leaders who have come through. The average age being 40, having gone through a lot of trouble, keeps everyone awake to the realities on the ground. And therefore, I think we are going to focus on implementation, because that has been the problem. Implementation and decision making, timely decisions, because actually 5 years is a very long time to cause a lot of things to change. So if we implement the rationalization properly, quickly, we have the parish model, and then we focus on the implementation, the budget, the priorities. I see certainly us getting a lot of people out of poverty, and once the people have got, gotten out of poverty, then you see the expansion of the economy, but not only expansion, but inclusive expansion, so that you don't have the GDP in a few hands. The beauty is that we are stable. We went through the elections. I think the country is, as Honorable said, the issue of security, people are safe to do whatever they can do. We just hope that this pandemic gets contained so that there is slow recovery, because Ugandans, we are known to be resilient. So if we have all these programs properly implemented, followed up, if someone is in charge of a very key decision, makes it on time, then we will see a big change. The beauty is you have new politicians, largely new people, who are only looking at, change, and hoping that they get re-elected in the next 5 years. So I don't think any of us is interested in going back. Our voters have less tolerance for incompetence and empty promises. So I think I expect a lot of focus, and perhaps we will see a little bit better results from Parliament and also from government.
Okay, thanks so much, KATESHUMBWA. From Kasese, Lucas says, Charles, tell Honorable Bahati that our national debt burden is a very clear economic roadblock to the entrance in the middle income status that we have repeatedly advocated for, okay? He says, I am Lucas, the voice of the voiceless in Kasese. And then someone called Geoffrey. Honorable Bahati, Geoffrey is also asking you a question, and he's saying, see, we spent as a country billions on swearing in, yet there are no drugs in the government health centers. And that's from Geoffrey. And then someone called Matua Job says, thank you, Charles, for the show. I have a question. In our hotels, almost all things are imported, including basmati rice, yellow orange. How can we solve this madness? And then another person says, this one I read from Eric in Lira. I read that already. And then, okay. I think those are all. Honorable Bahati, now wrap up. There are a lot of issues on your table, but I'll give you 2 minutes so that we are out of here. On the issues that were raised, the issue of corruption, you know, in summary, the focus is about, yes, there is optimism, but that optimism should come with the promises that have been made being implemented, and that if they are implemented, then there can be some positives that can accrue from those implementations. So, Honorable, come in and wrap up.
Yeah, first I want to really thank the new MPs on the talk show, that they have realized that becoming an MP is not a prize to claim or a trophy to rise, but a duty to service to our people. So I'm very optimistic that we'll have a very energetic group in the 11th Parliament that can make a contribution to our country. Charles, on the health sector, we have actually allocated 5.128 billion, which is 5.12 billion to the works and transport, and we have allocated 4 trillion to security, 3.8 trillion to education, and 3.3 trillion to health. So the resources to move these sectors are in place. For example, we passed a scanner at every hospital to be able to help people who have been moving miles and miles to get it. So as all the people have talked, we have the resources, we have a good plan in place, we have the right people under His Excellency the President, and I think the coming year will be a good year for us, a coming term of office. I have a lot of hope in it that we are going to change things. We are going to lift the 3.3 million people who live in subsistence economy to the money economy. That's the starting point. And the issue which one of the colleagues, somebody raised about what we do for all these things that we ought to use in Uganda. That's why we are emphasizing import substitution and export promotion. And for us to have a proper and working import substitution and export promotion strategy, we must have electricity. We must reduce the cost of doing business in our country. That's why we're investing in electricity. That's why we're investing in infrastructure. So in the medium term, the short run, you are going to see our borrowing going up a bit, in 2 years coming down. And I want to emphasize that our debt remains sustainable. But at the end of the day, focusing on inclusive growth is the way forward for this term. That's why we are going into the Parish model. Make sure that we organize our people for production and productivity, add value, have a growing fund, have a mindset change, and then move our economy forward. Charles, I cannot end without thanking the people of Ndogo West who sent me to Parliament and I was sworn in on Monday. I was expecting that you would congratulate me. I know you will do it at the end of the show, but I think I need to really thank the people of Ndogo West, the people of Kabaale who sent me to Parliament. I feel so energized as I was 2006 to serve them. And I think with the new leadership that the new mandate have been given under President Museveni, we'll be able to move forward. I'm also very grateful to His Excellency the President, who has made me a minister in this government. I look forward to continuing serving with him the coming years ahead of us.
Now you have used my space, my forum, to campaign to His Excellency the President to be reappointed a minister.
I was appreciating.
Thank you so much, Honorable David Bahati, a minister in the just ended cabinet. We pray that you are reappointed and perhaps to bigger things. Who knows? It's God's calling. And congratulations indeed for your swearing in as well yesterday. And to Katesh and DENIS, thank you so much for making it today. And I know we are really looking forward. Many people, you know, the jury is out there. For us, we are waiting for you. Should you slip a bit, we are going to cane you people properly in the next election. And for us, we sit here and we parade the voters to watch you. We shall not leave you not to work. But if you do the best, we shall also support you. Thanks to Sarah, BIREETE, and all the way from the West, and thanks to GGOOBI for making time. Someone has been viewing us called Mivule Ronald, and he says, introduce me as an aspiring MP for Iyala. He says the idea of getting our people out of subsistence agriculture is a good one, but must take into consideration the challenge of the markets at hand. Our milk cannot cross the Kenyan border. Our people are greatly affected. The prices of commodities are affected. Over 200,000 metric tons of sugar stuck. And yet we signed the East African Common Market Protocol. What does all this mean? Thanks so much, Mivule Ronald, and we wish you the best. But keep watching behind the headlines. And I want to thank the entire team, the production team, Margaret and your team, the technical crew here for ensuring that this show comes to everybody's sitting room every Wednesday at 10 p.m. I want to thank so much my producers. They make this possible, and many of them, including Morris, William, Bills, Fred, Ivan, and the entire team, Kent, and all the rest that make this possible. Until next week, have a lovely day. Those who are continuing to enjoy the drama at the swearing in, the dance and all that, the color, it's interesting to watch, especially that Arua man, the man with 2 belts. And you know, he has made a record.
I was going to tell you about Chiganda, whatever, but you will not understand.
What did you want to say in English?
The Baganda say,
yeah,
wesibe bili.
So that is the fashion, eh? I'm going to look forward to that fashion becoming a thing on the road, on our streets. But that man should patent his fashion. And to the rest of the team that have gotten sworn in, now we are waiting for the other developments that are coming. And then next week, I can guarantee you, we will be discussing the next parliament. We will have known by that time the speaker, and the Deputy Speaker by next Wednesday. So look out for that discussion here on Behind the Headlines. Bye-bye. God bless you all.